That's right, it is a pop quiz. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out tonight. Again, my name is Amanda Johnson. I'm the founder and executive director of Torch Literary Arts. Thank you so much. We are a local nonprofit here that specifically, with intention and love, supports and amplifies Black women writers. We are extremely excited to have our guest speaker tonight, Crystal Wilkinson, author of Praisesong for the Kitchen Ghosts, as well as other books that we didn't have on display here. Do read all of her work. She's an incredible talent, and we look forward to celebrating you and reading your work for years and years to come. I'm going to introduce Crystal, and then we are going to, she's going to read for us from the book, and we'll have a conversation, she and I, and we'll open it up for Q&A, and then we'll have a little cooking demo, and then see how the praise biscuits get made. Sound good? All right. I also want to do a quick thank yous. I want to thank the City of Austin Cultural Arts Division. They're one of our major funders who make this possible. I want to thank Weedsville Co-op. Thank you for opening this incredible space to us to have this event here. I want to thank our other incredible funders, the Brendan Johnson Foundation, the Poetry Foundation, and the National Endowment for the Arts, as well as the Austin Community Foundation. They make all of this possible with large donations, but we can't do this work without small donations. So there really is no donation at any level that doesn't impact the work we do. There is a QR code right over there on that table, so if you are inclined, please feel free to make a donation. $5, $50, any amount makes a difference, so that we can keep having these programs available at no cost to the public so everyone can come and enjoy. All right, without further ado, allow me to introduce Crystal Wilkinson. Crystal Wilkinson, Kentucky's Poet Laureate from 2021 to 2023, is the award-winning author of Perfect Black, The Birds of Opulence, Water Street, and Blackberries. She is the recipient of an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work in Poetry, an O. Henry Prize, a USA Artist Fellowship, and an Ernest J. Gaines Award for Literary Excellence. She has received recognition from Yaddo, Hedgebrook, the Hermitage Foundation, and others. Her short stories, poems, and essays have appeared in numerous journals and anthologies. She currently teaches at the University of Kentucky in the Creative Writing MFA program, and she is here with us tonight. Please welcome Crystal Wilkinson.
How are you all doing? I'm so glad to be in Austin, and especially glad to be here at an event sponsored by Torch and an event sponsored by Amanda Johnson. Amanda and I go way back. And she is one of the hardest working women in anything literary. I mean, period, but especially when it comes to literary arts. She has been, it just keeps growing and growing. She's worked for a very long time and works very hard. I love her and I'm pleased to know her. I thought, can you all still hear me if I sit down? You know, we got some age on us now. I thought what I would do, since we're talking about bread tonight, and as I've gone across the country, my publicist keeps saying, why don't you read something else, Crystal? And I'm like, I'm going to read from the bread chapter again. So, because bread is the theme tonight, it works tonight for me to read from the bread chapter. So and you'll see why, you know, one of the things I do in this book is trace my lineage back as far as I could. So I went all the way back to 1795, when my fourth great grandmother, Agni of Color, who later became Agni Wilkinson, was born. And I consider myself lucky, really, lucky and blessed to be able to trace back that far, because we know that Black people often can't. So I like to think of my ancestors as stand-in for all of our ancestors. And as I did this research, it made me think about, again, not just my own ancestors, but all the unnamed Black women of their time. And the only reason why I was able to find mine is because she was attached to a white man. My fourth great grandfather, Tarleton Wilkinson, was her common law husband, which was unheard of during that time. But he never took a white wife, and she was listed on census as his wife, which is, that's a whole complicated thing. But the other thing about this chapter is that it travels. Like, it starts with me and goes through my children, goes through Grandma Aggie, and then I'm gonna close with a short piece in the voice of my grandmother. What these women know about bread. There is cornbread in my blood. I can make it in my sleep, but it's hard to give someone else instructions unless they are standing right beside me in the kitchen. Ron, is my husband, Ron called me recently while I was away for a writing conference and asked me for my cornbread recipe. I hesitated, got a little angry that someone who had actually cohabitated with me for almost 15 years wouldn't know how to make cornbread. But then I remembered he's from Louisville, a city boy. Didn't your mama make cornbread, I asked him. He named 2 boxed cornbread mixes that tasted like cake, though I'm sure Miss Helen made a fine skillet of cornbread in her day. She's in her 90s now and no longer cooks, but she is a country woman too, born and raised on the Tennessee border down in Franklin, Kentucky. Never mind, I told him. Just use the directions on the cornmeal sack. Come to my kitchen and we'll make cornbread all day, but every time someone asks me for the recipe, I flounder. I have to think about it. I want to say, just let me make it for you. But I was too far away to make cornbread for him. In the end, he decided to remain without cornbread until I got back home. The last time one of my daughters asked me how to make cornbread, I made her get on a video call so I could see what we were working with. What are you fixing it with? I asked. She didn't think it mattered. She grew silent. I could tell she was a little perturbed with me. She thought I was clutching some ancient family recipe and not wanting to give it to her. But the truth was I needed to see her ingredients in order to tell her what she needed. Cornbread with a tablespoon of sugar added goes better with soup mix. Y'all can disagree, y'all. You need a more dense cornbread for dressing. That's dressing, not stuffing. Hot water cornbread is the better companion for cabbage. I wanted us to be shoulder to shoulder with our aprons on so I could show her like Granny showed me. She needed to hear my voice, and I needed my eye on her so she could get it right. I told her she needed self-rising cornmeal, milk, eggs, and oil for the skillet. She seemed surprised at that short list. Are you sure? She asked. I assured her that that was all she needed. She shrugged her shoulders like, here goes nothing. She looked unsure in her body above the bowl, standing all wrong. The bag of cornmeal awkward in her hand. She had none of the confidence I thought a daughter of mine should have while making cornbread. What had I done? What kind of mama had I been? When her bread was done, though, she held up her skillet up to the camera for me to see. It looked pretty. Had the perfect crisp brown texture that it needed to have. I nodded and smiled. She took a knife, cut into a corner, and tasted it. It don't taste like yours, she said. And I assured her that this moment too was as old as time, that we never thought we were as good as those old women who'd done it before us until they were gone. I made it awkward again. She said, I love you, Mommy, and hurried me off the phone. I don't think I'd be wrong if I said that my family's love of bread began with ash cakes cooked in an open fire outside a cabin in Kentucky in the 1800s. Though it's conjured by my imagination, I can see Grandma Aggie by the fire taking the rations of cornmeal, adding boiling water and salt, shaping the stiff batter in the ash cake so there'd be bread. There's always been bread. Grandma Aggie presents herself across nearly 200 years of bread making in our family. She manifests before me from 1810, shows her used to be to my own now. She says, come Saturday, when you get your rations, they'll all be hungry. The women will stand around, hold their hurdy backs. The men folk will sit on the ground or on turned up buckets, resting their elbows on their knees. You're tired down clean to the bones of your feet, but these children, the old people too, gotta eat. While the cow piece is cooking in the big pot with a little piece of salt pork over the fire, take you out enough cornmeal to make bread for everybody. Don't use it all down. Save us some for lunch through the week. When them coals get to blazing, take you a large helping of that cornmeal. Depends on how many mouths you're trying to feed. And mix in a little salt, just enough boiling water that your spoon stands straight up in that batter like a proud man. Use your hands and work up the dough. Shape your dough up in cakes. Now wrap you some wet leaves. You can use greens. You can even use oak leaves around each one of them cakes. Then set your cakes up on them hot ashes in the fire. Don't have no leaves. Just put them cakes on the ashes. They'll be just fine. When it gets to smelling good, it mixes up with the smell of them peas. Everybody will come out and stand around waiting with their tin plates. Some of them will eat straight from the pot with their homemade spoons or even out of the palms of their hands. They won't be on you, worrying you about when it's ready. But you'll see the tremble in their eyes, hear their stomachs talking back instead of their voice boxes. When the food's ready, you send somebody back in the kitchen to fetch Judah so she can eat. Put a good dab of them peas on the plate and serve up an ash cake for everybody. Now that's good eating. Old Duval, the overseer, will be there too now and again, walking, looking to make sure everybody's where they're supposed to be. But on Sunday nights, we don't pay too much mind. You'll get some whiskey in them soon enough and go on and go to bed. The people will thank you for the meal you've made. Judah will hug your neck and tell you what a good job you've done. You'll smile. You'll make your plate out of what's left. Dust the ash off your cake last. By the time everybody's done eating, the moon will be winking at you from the sky. Them bullfrogs will be singing down at the creek. That old hoot owl will commence to talking to his gal. You'll sit a while and enjoy them sounds all around you. The stars might come out and bless the world. Old Tat might pull out his fiddle, and his music is so sweet you put it up against any song by any bird in them oak trees. You look up the house up yonder and think about the cooking, the cleaning, the mending, the polishing, all the women's work and the men's work too. Coming after a little pause for the Lord's Day. You'll take in a big gulp of that night air way down in your belly. You'll see the curtain flutter just a little up there where Mark's Tarleton lays his head. You're nodding him, though you ain't so sure he can even see you among the others. All 20 of you are out of the cabins now, laughing and jawing. You're tired. Constant ache down in your back, but you don't turn it quite yet. Tat's music sounds as sweet as tea cake. You hear it with your ears and your heart. You think of your mother back in Virginia. You take that last bite of your ash cake, hum yourself a tune. Little Suze comes over to you with her fingers stuck in her mouth, her pretty eyes wide. You know the child's still hungry, so you take that last ash cake from your dress pocket. She scampers off with a wide grin on her face and shares it with two more youngins about her age. And you look up, and here comes Molly with a skirt full of persimmons and her sweetie Luke struggling against the weight of that deer meat he carries across his shoulder. You suck your teeth and say, "Ooh, Lord, y'all done brought us more work to do." But then you'll grin and take them both in your arms as if they were your own. You'll feel your muscles loosen just a little when you realize tomorrow's Sunday. And what a time you'll all have when Sunday supper comes. And I thought I would skip a little bit, and since we're talking about biscuits, get into the biscuits and read a little bit from toward the end of the chapter, and then have Amanda come up. Maybe change that. There's actors in the room, but I'm not one. So I can change back to myself. Cornbread and biscuits were the staples in my childhood home. I can't think of many meals that weren't served with one or the other. I've been making biscuits since I was 13 years old. I was already making bread at home when I got my first assignment in high school, home economics class. That recipe was simple and one that was provided by Mrs. Henson, our teacher. 1 cup of sifted flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, half a teaspoon of table salt, 2 tablespoons of shortening, and a 1/3 cup of milk. And I talk about what I do, I'll skip that part. I look at my precise handwriting on the index card and laugh now at how serious I was about getting those biscuits right. I had to protect my legacy even then. Mrs. Henson gave me a good review, but I was devastated when she didn't deem my biscuits the best. Mrs. Henson's recipe was close to Granny's recipe, but not quite. A biscuit is a biscuit, but perfection is in the nuance. My grandmother, of course, baked by sight with no written recipe. She knew what to do and how and when to do it from her mother's directions and from her own practice all those decades since she was a girl. When I made biscuits for Granny at home, sifted the flour from her metal Hoosier hutch with the big flour sifter attached, kneading the dough and rolling them out with her rolling pin, she watched me. She didn't give me any instructions, but once I had baked them and buttered one for her to try, she told me I had kneaded them too much and made them a little tough. But she gave me an approving nod. Years later, I made biscuits for my children. I had my first child when I was 18 years old, a sophomore in college. I made biscuits for him. By the time I was 26, I had 3 children and was a single mother. I worked as a news assistant for a local newspaper, was a fiction writer and a blossoming progressive feminist. But when it came to cooking, I was a generation removed from my peers because I had been grandparent raised. Biscuits and cornbread were a part of our everyday meals. I cooked and baked daily, and Sundays were my big cooking days. I would sometimes talk to my cousins or my best friend Pat when I began in the early hours of the morning preparing breakfast. Biscuits were always the morning bread. Then I began immediately preparing Sunday supper, which sometimes took me all day to cook. Over the years, I've morphed and changed my biscuit recipe to the one you see at the end of this chapter. I've made angel biscuits, cheddar biscuits, biscuits and sausage, biscuits and gravy, rhubarb, molasses, and blackberries over biscuits. The ingredients change slightly, but it's the memory and the adaptation of my grandmother's movements, the way she held her shoulders, the rhythm of her stir, the way she sometimes cut out biscuit dough with a water glass that make our biscuits the best. Though I miss my grandmother, when I turn my head just right, call out to her and listen, she comes whispering me a story.
Another round of applause for Crystal.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Another round of applause. I feel like with the weather, the ancestors are joining us.
Yes.
Yes, we felt that, right? We said, wait a minute. The ancestors said, wait a minute, my biscuits are where? In Texas? I'll be there. And everyone that's coming through us, you know, I definitely felt the hand. I'm gonna tell a little anecdote. Okay, so I was doing the recipe. I was just trying the biscuits. And I was looking at them through the light on, not opening the oven, because if, you know, you're looking, you ain't cooking. They say so. Turn the light on, I'm looking through the glass, and then I reckon they stay flat. And the butter's coming out and they sizzling. They look good, but they don't look like a biscuit. They look like a pancake or like a whole cake or something in the oven. And I felt my granny's hand on me say, look at the recipe. Go back and look at that. And I'm like, okay, it says self-rising flour this. And then it's, now look at the bag of flour. Now, like it turned my head and I said, that's not self-rising flour. I gotta get self-rising flour. So I took off, I ran, but I swear I felt my granny's hand on me from him, my ancestor. And then I thought, I bet Crystal's granny probably up there too, say, tell her she messing up my biscuit. But my first question for you is, you know, this is such an incredible book that spans 5 generations of Black Appalachian family, your family. Where did you start with the project like that? Like, what was that first impetus that said, you know, I'm going to write this memoir through my family's food?
You know, it started with my grandmother, right? When I started writing this book, I thought that it was going to just be an homage to my grandmother because she raised me. That's where most of my memories lie. And then, when I found Agni, Grandma Agni, she wouldn't let me go. I was so surprised to find her and to find information on her. The more I found, it's so funny well, surprising that I didn't hire a genealogist for this, but I have since hired a genealogist who's found out even more about her, which I'm so excited about because I became obsessed with her. I became obsessed with the fact that I couldn't go any further than her. And, you know, I came across her and I didn't forget about Granny because I was like, okay, Granny, what are you going to do? I kept talking to my grandmother, but I was in Florida, and I talk about this in the book too. I was in Florida on a writing retreat, and I was supposed to be writing something about Granny. But then I found Grandma Agni, and I just thought about her all day and into the night, crying about what her life must have been like. And when I woke up, I felt like she was speaking to me. And she said, I called to my mother, but not in your language. And I was like, oh, okay. And, you know, as a fiction writer, I'm like, oh, okay, a character. Here comes a character talking to me. And I realized it was something, it scared me. I realized it was something deeper than that. So I got up out of the bed and I was in Florida. And so I walked the beach. I was scared of the iguanas. There was iguanas everywhere, and I was dodging the iguanas and walking and crying, and I did that loop 3 or 4 times, and then I came in and just started writing. And after I had written those pages, then I went back and began to do research. As soon as the plane landed, I got in my car and drove to my hometown and started trying to find as much about her as I could.
Your work, you know, in this project is so heavily informed by research, and I think that's something that can feel intimidating to folks who are not used to doing that type of preparation for a writing project. I would say, you know, you also being at the University of Kentucky have great access to, you know, libraries there and resources, but this took you beyond that. So maybe if you could share a little bit about what your research technique was like to discover more about your family, for those who might be interested in doing the same.
Well, I had to limit myself some because I kept falling into every rabbit hole and wanting to stay there because it's fascinating. Once once you start finding out about your family and your heritage, just wanting to know more. And again, it was devastating. I found a lot of devastating things. Like I found that my fourth grade grandfather, Tarleton, like the names that I have in the book, like when I say, that was my grandmother, fourth grade grandmother Agni, that I brought to life in that passage that's telling us how to make action mix. So when she mentions Judah, Judah was a woman that my ancestors owned. And Sue's was one of them. Like I wanted to honor every name that I found, whether they were sort of related to me or not. And so I tried to put as many of them into the book as possible. And you know, I have to talk about the grief part and how I had to take breaks. Because it's one thing to be, you know, educated, to be a black woman in America and know about slavery. We all know about it. We knew about it our whole lives. But then for it to be so close, to know that she's called Agni of Color. And I'm like, how do I know her mom? Don't know her mama's name. How do I even know that her mama named her Agni? Maybe they named her Agni when they bought her. And then for me to have been, you know, so proud of the Wilkinson name my whole life, because it's my grandparents' name, and it's my mama's name, and I took that name and I kept that name even through all of my, I won't tell y'all all my business, but through my J-Lo weddings, my J-Lo marriages I had, I still kept Wilkinson. But then to really know, you know, I knew where it came from, but to really know, to be able to touch it, to see records of where they bought people and sold people. You know, my fourth great grandfather, Tarleton, his father gave a baby to his granddaughter as a gift. There's a deed for that. So all of that was wrapped into that. And at some point I had to like historically think about him too. And I had to think about, okay, here's a white man in the 1800s who never took a white wife, who had the sheriff's, constables, whatever they were called at that time, on his door. He had to appear in court several times regarding the way that he was living. You know, he deeded her kitchen items, feather beds, household items, feather bedstead, and crocks and pans, and they had 10 children. And you know, he was taken out of his father's will. Everybody else got property and got enslaved human beings and everything else when he died, and he got $5. So, which is evidence that he was not going along with everything that was going on. So it just got more and more complicated as I went along. So I just took little bits, because when I would fall into a hole, I would say, okay, yeah, come back. Like, you have to come back to the main story. And I would say, what do I need to move this forward? And I would move, you know, I had the genealogical research, I had the archival research, there were these layers. I had like the history of Kentucky in front of me, and then I had the history of the United States. And so I had to just keep moving. And I kept thinking of it as breath, like I had to just keep breathing in, breathing out, and give myself a space, that, you know, a barrier. Like this was the line I drew around this, and then I couldn't go any further, even though I wanted to. So after a while, when I trained myself to do that, I would get, like, I got obsessed with some of these other folks, and I want to write about them eventually, that got sold off, or that started other families, or, you know, her name was Patsy Rife, and she ended up being a well-known businesswoman, and had a hunting lodge where white men would come and go hunting, and she would cook for them, and they would pay her. And she was like a hotel, basically. They'd come and come on their land, and there was orchards and all kinds of wild game, and she did advertisements, and you know, she had a whole business going. And then she, as a black woman, actually owned her husband, bought him out of slavery, and married him, and then freed him. And they had a bunch of kids, and 2 of their children passed. Like, they decided they were going to be white, and just went off and white. So that's what I mean by rabbit holes. I'm like, where is Mary Ellen? What happened to Mary Ellen? And then I would try to find Mary Ellen, and then I found out that she married a white man and lived this white man. I was like, look at Mary Ellen acting a fool over here. And I was like, there's a whole short story. There's another chapter, you know, so I had to just write it all back in. And also remember that my lens was food. So whenever I got way out there, I'm like way out here somewhere, I'm like, okay, what's going on with food? And bring it back.
Fantastic. So, acting a fool. We are. I'm sure we can all find not just ancestors, but people you know today. Take notes. They might be a chapter in your book one day. But back to the food. You know, there's incredible family recipes in this book, and I'm curious as to how you became the caretaker of these recipes, and then also, you know, sharing recipes. Talk about acting a fool. Who putting the recipe out there for the world to have? But it's such a gift to share. So how did you become caretaker of these recipes, these incredible family recipes? You know, how did you decide what to share? And I know there's also recipes that are vegetarian and vegan. Those have been adapted from the original. You know, that's a whole nother family conversation, I'm sure. So maybe talk about how you made that decision so you opened up those recipes.
Well, I was getting to part of that in that chapter that I read, but when I was my grandmother, my mother was diagnosed as being apparently schizophrenic, and so she had gone to Ohio, met my father. She was living with her sister. She had another mental break, and my grandparents were like, our baby ain't gonna be living in no city, you know, having a nervous breakdown. We're gonna go get her. And so by the time they came and got her, there I was. She had me. And so I ended up being, you know, my mother was institutionalized for a while, for a long while, in and out of the mental institution for about 10 years. And my grandmother raised me. Well, I was full rock, for one, just rock to the core. She carried me around. Somebody was always saying, put that girl down, put that girl down, so she could walk. I can still hear my uncle saying that, and if I remember that, that means I was too grown for her to be carrying me around. Too big, but she was carrying me. So I was with her all the time, and one of my earliest memories is standing up in a chair, like at the stove, really wanting to look down and see what was in the pots. And her letting me, you know, I know like old time people do, like, I mean, I don't know, somebody probably called CBS, whatever it's called, CBS now, about having a child up on top of the stove. But like, I was way up there, but she, of course, had her fourth eye, one of them eyes on me at all times. But so I learned how to cook early. Like, I knew how to cook when I was a little girl. There's pictures of me like at 6, 7 at the stove cooking. And yeah, again, I was spoiled. I liked to cook. So she let me cook, but I didn't know how to do nothing else. know how to do nothing else. When I was in high school, she would say, "What are you gonna wear tomorrow?" And I'd tell her what outfit I was gonna wear. She would iron it for me and be ready the next day. So when I got to college, I didn't know how to. I had a collar. I was like, "Brenda, how do I wash these clothes?" She said, "Just bring them home." I said, "No, I want to do it. I want to do it." But I could cook for the whole dorm. So I finally figured out that I could trade. Like I would cook, so I'd be in the basement where the dorm kitchen was. I'm frying chicken, making all, and everybody's washing my clothes. It worked out. But I remember, again, in high school home ec, it was our assignment to take one of those metal recipe boxes, and we had to fill them up. And so I went home, and I knew how my grandmother was, so I know I couldn't say, "Granny, can you give me the recipe for this? Can you give me the recipe for that?" So I asked her, like, tell me about making biscuits, or tell me about making this kind of cake or that kind of cake. And she would say something like, "Well, reach in there and get that yellow bowl. You're going to fill it up halfway. Then you're going to pour some milk in, get you a dab of this. And if it don't look right, if it's too dry, pour you some more milk in. If it's not," and I was just thinking, oh, what are the measurements? Of course I didn't know, but I wrote down what she said. And, years later, I started looking at those, and I could cook from them because I watched her, not because the measurements were right, but because I watched her and I wrote. And that's how I filled up my recipe box, was just writing down what she said. Every once in a while, she would give me a measurement, or she'd say something, and I would measure it myself. Like, oh, she put it in the palm of her hand as a tablespoon. And she used to measure like that. Even stuff that did have recipes that did have exact, she would put, like she had a certain way she did her ham, and that was a teaspoon. She'd flatten it out a little bit as a tablespoon. So the pinches and the dabs, I wrote all those down. And recipes sounded like poems to me, because I could hear my grandmother's, the oral nature of it. It was a story. Like I could hear my grandmother saying, "What you gonna need is get you some, make sure you get you some butter, let your butter set out, and then you do this and you do that." So that's how I had written this book originally. And Francis Lamb, who does the Splendid Table, was my editor, and he said, "So this is beautiful, but are these recipes cookable?" And I said, "Yes, they are cookable. My granny cooked them. I know how to cook them." And he said, "Well, do you have to go to every reader's house to tell them how to cook them?" And so we hired a recipe tester. And I think she was up in Boston, which was even funnier, because she would say, "I made the chicken and dumplings, but it's supposed to be all white." Oh, and I said, "Yes, it is. It's carbs. It's biscuit dough. You basically eat a pan of gravy. That's what it is. Good. Good stuff. So that's how we did that. And so each one of them, she would sort of interpret them, and then I would recook it and see if that worked, and see till we got it right, going back and forth that way. Okay, I'm a vegetarian. I was a vegetarian for 20 years. And, that's one of my biggest regrets in my life, is that I was this, black hippie child going back to my grandmama's house, and her trying to cook for me, and me saying, "Well, Granny, I'm a vegetarian. I can't eat that. I'm a vegetarian." And so she would tone things down and still have ham cooking, and then she would give me a bowl of something. And I was arrogant about it. I was like, "Well, I can't eat that." And she'd say, "Well, a little bit of meat ain't gonna hurt you." And that was her take on it. Like, it's just got a little bit in there, that ain't gonna hurt you. So deepest regrets. So I started as a vegetarian. And I also, the reason I'm not a vegetarian anymore is because of being homesick. Now mind you, I know with my physique and my age that this is not, although I'm cute. But health-wise, this is not the time to be deciding that I'm not a vegetarian. But I haven't been a vegetarian for about 5 or 6 years now. But it was thinking about this book and starting to write this book, and I was like, I gotta have the authentic taste. So I went back to everything. I even went back to, I still cook vegetarian greens. I don't put ham hock or anything in my greens, but I did go on a search for hog head cheese. I'm still on a search for that. I can't find anybody who makes it like my grandparents did. Yeah, every time I find something, it's got vinegar in it and it's got hot pepper in it. I'm like, that ain't how they do it. Yeah. So, I'm an amalgam now. I'm the kind of vegetarian that will eat, I went back there and ate some of their tofu. I was like, oh, that's good. But I'm the kind of vegetarian that will eat, former vegetarian that will fix scrambled tofu and bacon. For breakfast.
But is it though? It could be very right. No. Well, I ask one last question. We've got incredible holidays. Coming up. Easter just wasn't not too long ago, and here in Texas, well now everywhere is Juneteenth. I know. Yes. So, but Texas, we celebrated Juneteenth for a long time before it became a national holiday, federal holiday. If we were celebrating Juneteenth in Kentucky at your house, what would you fix for us to celebrate that important freedom day?
I think it would be my same. We have one holiday meal in my family, and then it changes out sometimes, but it's always the big meals, the harvest meal or Thanksgiving, the Christmas meal, the Easter meal. They're almost all the same. Like you can insert different vegetables, like instead of greens you can fix green beans and meat potatoes, but it's always like you're gonna have something baked and something fried. So you might have a roasted, you might have a turkey, or you might have a ham, and then you might have fried chicken, and on and on. We were not big like barbecue people. We didn't barbecue in the mountains. It was all kind of food like that. They would have roasted mutton. That was a big thing in my family, to have mutton.
Well, I'm sure we can find all of that and more in this incredible book, Praisesong for the Kitchen Ghost. Thank you so much for reading and being conversation. And now we're going to invite Faith Miller up, our incredible program associate, to support with this demo. We was like, who won't put their hands in the bowl? Faith! Faith is going to come up and help us. So we're going to turn this TV on. I was like, this is so nice. They've got this television. We're having a whole Food Network moment with the TV. Let's see here. We can get that on. Excellent. There you go. Can we see that up there? Yeah. So it's pointed right over here over the workstation. And you gotta love Faith. Faith said, can I look at the recipe real quick in the book? I said, the woman who wrote it is gonna show you how to do it. So, it might be, much like Crystal was saying, it might be this much as opposed to what it's saying in the book. But we'll do whatever you tell us to do to make these incredible biscuits. So go on and step right on up, Faith. We've got ingredients right up there. Milk and butter is right behind you. All right, so these are the, yes, we can. So these are the Praisesong biscuits, and was pictured right there on the cover of this beautiful book. And we're just gonna let Crystal, if you wanna walk us through here, I'm gonna pass you the mic.
Well, you gotta give me the book too. We're gonna look at the book first. Because again, if I make these at home, I make them like my grandma did. And the way that I do. I don't pull out my own recipe when I make them. So she's got self-rising flour. You're gonna get you about 2.5 cups of self-rising flour. Start out with 2. Gotta get it open first, babe. Is that a cup? Half a cup, okay.
So we gotta do that.
Gotta do math. Gotta have 4 of those. Or just stick your cup down in there. Do y'all make biscuits? These biscuits, and you are, you go ahead.
Hey, do you bake?
You measure, you gotta get closer to that. All right. You gotta be close to kind of correct. So we're going, that's 3, right? So we're just gonna do one more, because I'm pretty sure the way you pile that up. You probably got it right now. Then you're gonna take a 1/2 cup of the Crisco. So I have to tell y'all the story that the first person that got this book was my 87-year-old auntie, Aunt Lo, and she was in the hospital, and she knew it was coming out, and she knew that she was in it, and so she was in the hospital, and I took it to her, and she was the first one to have a copy, so she was so happy. And then I thought something was wrong. She called me up in the night from the hospital room, and I thought, oh Lord, are you all okay? And she said, yes, I just want to tell you that I'm enjoying this book, but it's wrong. And I said, what's wrong, Aunt Lo? And she said, well, on the biscuits, they say cornmeal. And I said, oh, they just talking about the texture of cornmeal. She said, okay. I want to make sure. Now, I'm not saying you got it wrong. I want to make sure that they get you right. So when you put the Crisco in, then you're going to take a fork. You know, if you fancy and have a pastry cutter, do it with a pastry cutter. But you're going to take a fork and you're going to mash the Crisco, shorten it in. Now, you know these are really good if you use lard, but you know, we're not going all the way in on the pork. We're not going into the pork. And when you do this, you just want to incorporate it in to where it does look like coarse cornmeal. How many biscuit makers we get? All right. Then you're going to take, I think I said a 1/2 stick. You're going to take a 1/2 stick of the butter. 1/2 stick. Yeah, 4 tablespoons of cold butter. And you're going to do the same thing, but you could cut the butter. Sometimes the butter, how soft is it? If it's sitting out or is it cold? Okay, that's good. Butter's hard to work with, so you might want to just cut that up in pieces. I usually think about peas, like having the pieces in it, the size of peas. Anybody got biscuit questions. They gonna be done.
So in the recipe, I did notice it says like you can use a glass or a 3-inch biscuit cutter.
Yeah.
Is it really better to do either?
Well, when I made, somebody tried to make my chicken and dumplings, and they said, well, mine didn't turn out right. And I said, what did you use? And they used a rolling pin, rolled them out to death. Rolled them flat, all the way flat. And so they came out more like noodles. My grandmother, she had rolling pins, but she had a glass that she used for just about all of her baking for her biscuits and for her dumplings. And I think it's just, you don't want to overwork your biscuits, and you don't want to overwork the dough that you make dumplings out of, because if you do, they'll be tough. You won't have the fluffiness, they'll be tough. And, okay. Yeah, just put it on in there. Well, it needs to be smaller than that thing. You can break it up with your hands. I saw you wash your hands.
So this is a demo. We got, move that.
Yes.
You said you want to make sure you don't overwork the dough, and I know my grandmother and my mom talk about that too, but can you?
What that means?
Yeah, I'm just.
Yeah, that's like the old time people tell you things like, how long should I do this, you ask them, and they say, till it looks right. But I think overworking the dough for me, it gets a little elastic. Like you don't want it to get to, like you know how you make bread, and sometimes you want bread to be elastic. Like you want to knead it a lot and get everything worked into it if you're making homemade bread. Sometimes, depending on what kind of bread you're making. But here in a minute. Okay, so just stir that in there. We're gonna go ahead and put in. Like I like when you make these at home, like get your butter around the size of a pea, even if you have to cut it up and chop it up. And so you're gonna stir that in there.
That's a little bit.
That's a little big, but we're gonna get going. Hers is a little big. And then you're gonna add a cup of milk. All right. It's good. It's fine. It'll eat. But what you're doing when you start kneading, you get it you get the gluten coming up too much, and then it changes the texture of the biscuits and makes them a little. That's when you have dense biscuits instead of getting the rise and the fluff. Or if you're making dumplings, that's when your dumplings end up tasting like noodles. And I was like, well, if I wanted noodles, I would make noodles. Some people make, when they say they're making chicken dumplings, they're really making noodles anyway. I mean, intentionally. They like it that way, the flat ones. So that's what, I was somewhere the other day and, okay, now you're gonna just stir that up. You don't have to, you can almost need to smell now. But do it before. Stir, stir, stir. It'll get sticky, yeah, and you want to keep it pretty sticky. And now, she's scared of it, y'all. Now go ahead and put your hand in it. Faith, let me see what you work with. You want to try to make a dough ball. Dive in, girl. Dive in. Not like that. Take the whole, you make one big dough ball. One big dough ball. That's why my kids don't want to, they're like, just keep it on the Zoom phone. because she had so much flour.
A little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more milk, just a little bit. All right. Stir fry. And you gotta get in there and work it, turn it into a ball. You're gonna get your use that bread thing and put your little flour down there. Flour, my husband laughs at me all the time because I can't say flour. I didn't grow up saying flour. So he tests me. He'll say, well, what's this? And he'll show me a blossom. And I'll say, that's flour. And he'll say, well, what's the white stuff you use to make biscuits? And I say, that's flour. It's all the same word, flour.
You say he's from Louisville?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Then he'll say he's from Louisville, not Louisville. All right. So put you a little flour. Get this out of me. On there. Plop it over there. I see one on the front row that's the expert. What you think? How's she doing? Does she look like she knows what she's getting?
All the time she's whispering in my ear.
I know. That's what she's saying, right?
Okay, then you're gonna dig it a little bit. How do you dig? This is like, I didn't know I was just like the old time people. Dig it, girl. So you're gonna bring it in towards you like this. Just do that several times until it gets to form more of a ball. I still think it's probably too dry. She probably put about 3 cups of flour in there the way she reared those cookies. All right, flop it. Go ahead. Your business is gonna be tough, honey. They're gonna but you're gonna have to, you're gonna practice. You're gonna practice. All right, go ahead and roll them out. Yeah, so to me, the secret is, ooh, Lord. Don't hurt them. Just roll them out to go there. All the way across. And then you can turn it this way too.
So y'all see, this is a real cookie demo.
All right.
Not for beginners.
No, it is for beginners. They probably have better texture than me. There's one of the things when the book came out, people keep sending me pictures of their biscuits. And I mean, there's everybody from 10-year-olds to people that have never made biscuits before in their life. And so I love seeing the pictures because they all turn out good. All right. Yeah, let's just go ahead and cut it out.
You said about half an inch, I think it says in the recipe.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Is that
I say that these are kind of, I leave them bigger,
bigger than that? Or
about
about
that size. So cut them out. What are we cutting them out with? We got a glass.
You got that good?
Lord.
We don't have a glass. We don't have a glass. But is
All right. Lift it up. She's so scared.
Wow. There you go.
But see, when she gets to the comfort of her own home, very good, very good, very good. Yeah, you just keep doing that. Yeah, she's using the measuring cup. I would use a water glass, but this is working. I ain't mad. LV shaped, there you go.
I don't know if y'all can see on the television all the butter laced through this.
Yeah, that's the one reason why I came up with this particular recipe. I tested these on my family, and we went through, I make biscuits all the time, and they taste, I make buttermilk biscuits, I make all kinds of biscuits, but this was the one that won among my family. But this ain't how my grandmother made biscuits. She made biscuits with lard, or with Crystal. She didn't put butter in hers. So this is my version. All right. Get that one out. And so, what I want to say too, the secret about the rise, when people talk about their biscuits not rising, the secret is to let them kiss. Like you set them up, let them kiss, and glue them together, so then they rely on each other to rise. And they'll rise, you'll get a higher, you'll get a little bit of a higher rise. So there we are. The other thing that I will say is, in the book, it says to put them on 400, which will work, but if you're from is that okay. Oh, I was going to say the universal. What's the universal temperature for your oven? 350. You put it on 350. If they seem like they're not browning, then you can turn it up to 400.
All right. Well, thank you, Crystal. Oh my gosh, sorry, we got that emergency notice, so I want to be respectful to folks' needs in the audience. One more round of applause for Crystal Wilkinson. Thank you so much. We are going to pull the magic movie biscuits out of the oven that are ready for you. Put them over here if you want to grab one. Please get there. And Crystal is going to be right over here signing those books that you purchased. Thank you so much, Black Pearl Books, again, for bringing books and making them available. Please see Crystal have your book signed. Please grab a biscuit. Please check out Torch Literary Arts online at torchliteraryarts.org.